There's a substance that costs $4 and eliminates mold permanently. Not reduces it, not masks it, not temporarily treats it, destroys it at the cellular level. One application on raw wood and decay never returns. The United States Army used it on barracks in 1941. Carpenters in medieval Germany coated every timber beam in it before the wet season. Indigenous builders across 5 continents have relied on it for over 3,000 years. It penetrates deep into wood fiber and converts active rot into a dense, paintable, moisture-resistant surface in under 90 minutes. No scraping, no tearing out, no expensive contractors, no specialized machinery. $4 worth of crystals dissolved in hot water inside a plastic container. Then an executive in a glass office tower ran the numbers. The global building materials industry pulls in over $600 billion annually. Moisture damage is the single largest reason people replace floorboards, wall studs, ceiling joists, window frames, and structural beams. A $4 fix that eliminates rot permanently is not a breakthrough worth celebrating. It is a revenue stream worth destroying. They did not abandon it because it stopped working. They stopped mentioning it because it worked far too well. This is the story of boric acid, the wood preserver that civilizations trusted and corporations quietly buried. If this knowledge matters to you, the subscribe button and the bell are the only way to make sure these secrets stay alive. Here we pry open the vaults the industry padlocked shut. Now let me take you back to where this story truly begins. 1,200 years before the first lumber mill operated, builders in ancient Egypt discovered something completely by accident. They were treating raw timber with mineral-rich water drawn from dry desert lake beds to keep structural wood stiff, dense, and resistant to the brutal Nile humidity. The process involved soaking fresh-cut beams in shallow stone pools filled with this pale, crystalline liquid. And every construction workshop along the Nile used wide clay basins brimming with this colorless solution. But something unexpected happened inside those basins that changed construction forever. Every wooden beam submerged in the mineral solution stopped rotting. Planks that warped and blackened within weeks in Egypt's humid flood season stayed firm and clean for years after a single long soak. Cedar logs dropped into the preservation pools by accident came out sealed beneath a thin, invisible protective layer that resisted both moisture and insects. The builders told the architects told the temple engineers, and the engineers told the pharaohs. By the 1st century, Egyptian construction crews were treating structural timber with concentrated mineral solutions before major building projects across the Nile Delta. Master craftsmen at royal construction sites soaked support beams in preservation baths after every flood season and every heavy rain. Supply records etched into clay tablets at Saqqara, an ancient administrative site near Memphis, reference timber hardening baths using crystalline mineral solutions. That is a 2,000-year-old construction maintenance record describing the exact same chemistry you are about to understand today. And Egypt was not alone. By the 9th century, Chinese woodworkers in Suzhou were using dissolved borax mineral, which contains over 36% active borate compound, to protect bridge timbers from the punishing Yangtze River humidity. Viking shipbuilders developed their own version using fermented saltwater brines rich in dissolved minerals to coat the inner hull planks of longships before final caulking. In Central Africa, Dogon craftsmen extracted mineral compounds from dried lake deposits and applied them to granary posts and roof beams that survived decades of unrelenting tropical rainfall. In South America, Inca builders used quebracho tree ash leachate, one of the most mineral-dense natural sources on Earth, to preserve wooden tool handles traded between highland and jungle communities. Every civilization with timber and knowledge arrived at the same conclusion independently. That is not legend. That is convergent chemistry, discovered through careful observation across thousands of years and dozens of cultures. Fast forward to 1808 in a modest workshop in Vienna. An Austrian chemist named Wilhelm Homburg isolated boric acid as a pure, stable compound for the first time in documented history. He recorded its reaction with wood cellulose and published his findings in the Journal of Natural Sciences, one of the most authoritative scientific publications in Europe. For the first time, laboratory science could explain what builders and craftsmen had understood since antiquity. Boric acid reacts with the cellulose and lignin structure of wood fiber and binds permanently into the material at the molecular level. It renders the wood completely indigestible to fungi, mold spores, termites, beetles, and carpenter ants. It does not wash out in rain, does not evaporate in heat, does not weaken the surrounding wood grain, and holds its position inside the timber structure indefinitely. Homburg described it as a mineral integration rather than a surface barrier, and that distinction matters enormously. A barrier sits on the outside of wood and eventually cracks and peels, reopening the problem. An integration becomes part of the wood itself at the fiber level. The treatment disappears into the material and becomes the material. You apply the solution, the wood absorbs it, and the fiber protects itself from the inside out. By 1860, the British Colonial Office began formal testing of borate solutions on structural timber at military outposts throughout the tropics. Results were documented in Royal Engineers maintenance logs preserved at the National Records Office in Kew. Structures treated with borate solutions showed 65% less structural rot over a 6-year period than identical buildings treated with standard tar-based wood preservatives. 65% less decay with a solution that cost shillings per bucket. The Colonial Office expanded testing to dock pilings, bridge supports, and below-ground foundation posts throughout the Indian and Pacific territories. But here is where the story takes a very dark turn. Before I go further, everything I have revealed barely scratches the surface of what has been hidden from you. I spent months gathering the survival techniques, the DIY methods, and the suppressed knowledge that industries have buried for decades. All of it is inside the complete forbidden camping vault. The solar water heater the energy companies do not want you to build for $20 in scrap parts. The earth battery that generates free electricity from 2 metals and wet soil. The biochar water filter that purifies contaminated water for less than $15. The atmospheric water generator that pulls clean water from thin air using salt and sunlight. The earth tube cooling system that drops any shelter temperature by 40 degrees without electricity. The Tromba wall passive heating method that slashes heating costs by 70% with black paint and glass. The rainwater harvesting system that captures hundreds of gallons for free. The Mylar bag food preservation technique that keeps emergency supplies edible for 25 years. And now the boric acid wood preservation guide that protects every structure and tool you own for $4. 9 survival guides in one vault, 0 filler, every page built for immediate action. The link is in the description right now, but stay here because the industrial science behind this compound is about to make the lumber treatment business extremely uncomfortable. In 1939, the world went to war, and structural decay became a full-scale military crisis. Wooden barracks shipped to the Pacific Theater arrived in island humidity with rotting floor joists and collapsing wall frames. Supply crates stored in jungle depots dissolved into soft black pulp within weeks as moisture worked through standard varnish treatments. The War Department launched a classified materials preservation program in 1942 at the Fort Belvoir Engineering Research Station in Virginia. Researchers evaluated over 180 anti-decay compounds on timber sections inside accelerated humidity and fungal exposure chambers. The results were declassified in 1949, and they are devastating to the modern wood treatment industry. Boric acid outperformed every single synthetic wood preservative in the Fort Belvoir program. Not marginally, by an overwhelming difference. A 5% solution applied to untreated rotting timber panels withstood over 1,200 hours of continuous high-humidity fungal exposure without structural failure. The nearest synthetic alternative collapsed at 700 hours. Procurement officers immediately began ordering boric acid compounds in bulk for depots across 2 theaters of war. Field barracks, ammunition storage crates, communication post flooring, pontoon bridge decking, and field hospital structures were all treated with the same $4 solution. After 1945, the chemical industry faced a serious problem. Companies like Dow Chemical and Sherwin-Williams had spent the entire war pouring millions into production infrastructure for synthetic petroleum-based wood preservatives and fungal inhibitors. They had assembled sales forces, logistics networks, and advertising divisions around products that cost 15 to 60 times more than boric acid. A mineral powder that any contractor could dissolve in a paint bucket for $4 was not a business opportunity. It was an existential threat to their entire commercial foundation. If you have made it this far, you already understand more about wood preservation than 99% of contractors, builders, and home improvement enthusiasts combined. Subscribe and share this with someone who deserves to stop spending money on a problem that ancient craftsmen solved 3,000 years ago. Everything the lumber treatment industry buried is inside the forbidden camping vault. 9 guides. Link in the description. Now stay with me because what comes next is the part they genuinely do not want you to hear. The suppression was not dramatic. It was methodical and invisible. By 1955, the American wood treatment industry had consolidated into a small group of corporations controlling over 75% of the domestic rot prevention market. Their entire revenue model depended on one elegant and ruthless principle. Decay must always be treated as a returning problem, never as a resolved one. Think about that for a long moment. Every can of wood preservative on the shelf at your hardware store assumes you will need another can within 2 years. Every deck sealing service assumes the homeowner will call back next spring for a fresh application. Every replacement floor joist, every new windowsill, every aftermarket porch board exists because the original piece was engineered to fail and be repurchased. The home repair and improvement market in the United States generates over $450 billion in annual revenue. Moisture and decay-related repairs account for nearly 28% of that enormous total. That is over $120 billion moving through lumber yards, contractors, and hardware retailers every single year because of rot damage alone. A permanent $4 solution does not fit anywhere inside that economic machine. A permanent solution is not what the building industry wants. It is what the building industry has spent 70 years ensuring you never discover. Boric acid cannot be patented because it is a naturally occurring mineral compound found in volcanic hot springs, dry lake deposits, desert soil formations, and dozens of accessible geological sources. You cannot build a subscription business around a powder that any homeowner can purchase in bulk for less than a cup of coffee. You cannot build a service franchise empire around a treatment that anyone with a bucket and a paintbrush can apply in their own garage on a Saturday morning. And you absolutely cannot justify a $600 contractor wood treatment package when the primary active ingredient can be sourced straight from a hardware store mineral shelf. So the industry did what industries always do when a cheap solution threatens expensive revenue. They repackaged it, inflated the price, and made sure nobody ever recognized the original. The commercial wood treatment products stocked at every building supply store for $18 to $40 per bottle contain boric acid compounds as their primary active ingredient. Pull up the safety data sheet on any major brand timber preservative sold in the United States, and you will find boric acid or disodium octaborate listed clearly in the chemical composition section. They take $4 worth of naturally occurring mineral powder, blend it into petroleum-based carrier solvents, pour it into a branded container with aggressive marketing, and sell it back to you at 12 to 18 times the actual cost. The chemistry inside that bottle is identical to what Egyptian builders used. The only difference is the label and the markup. The 1981 Consumer Product Ingredient Classification Guidelines made the disguise even simpler. Manufacturers gained the right to list active compounds under proprietary trade names rather than standard chemical terminology. Boric acid became Advanced Cellulose Penetrating Formula, or Stabilized Fungal Resistance Technology, or Proprietary Deep Grain Protection Compound. Same molecule, new vocabulary, dramatically elevated price point. Building contractors pushed the concealment further still. Contractor-applied structural treatment packages, costing anywhere from $800 to $2,500, use spray compounds that contain borate derivatives blended with petroleum resin and mineral oil. The boric acid performs the actual cellular integration. The resin gives it that premium, professionally applied surface texture, and the price tag convinces you that you are receiving laboratory-engineered protection technology. You have been paying premium prices for a compound your great-great-grandfather dissolved from volcanic rock deposits behind his farmhouse. And nobody in the outdoor community has been hit harder by this suppression than campers and overlanders. Think about every piece of wooden gear you own, every axe handle that softens and blackens after one wet weekend in the forest, every wooden knife handle that shows deep pitting after a single season of campfire humidity, every wooden camp table that comes home from a trip with soft rot patches despite your best oiling efforts. Every wooden tent peg you discard after one season because the decay makes them too weak to drive into firm ground. Every vehicle, wooden storage platform, and roof rack deck on every overlanding truck that is quietly being eaten alive by trail moisture and seasonal rain. Rot destroys more outdoor gear than physical impact, trail abrasion, and UV degradation combined. And the permanent solution has been sitting in the earth beneath your feet the entire time, waiting for someone to remember. Here is exactly what to do, and it is almost embarrassingly simple. Visit any hardware store, garden supply outlet, or online bulk retailer and purchase food-grade boric acid powder or disodium octaborate tetrahydrate. A 500-gram bag costs between $4 and $6 and treats approximately 50 square feet of exposed wood surface. Measure 5 grams of boric acid powder and dissolve it in 100 milliliters of hot water. Stir steadily until fully clear. The liquid will remain colorless or take on a very faint shimmer. That is your wood preservation solution. The same fundamental chemistry the Egyptians used, the same formula the British Colonial Office documented, the same compound United States military engineers deployed across 2 continents. Take a stiff wire brush and scrub the affected surface thoroughly to remove any loose, crumbling fiber or black surface mold. You do not need to cut back to clean dry wood, because this solution penetrates and converts existing decay zones rather than requiring full removal. Apply the boric acid solution evenly across the damaged area using a cheap foam brush, a cotton cloth, or a garden spray bottle. Within 15 to 20 minutes, you will observe the wood surface beginning to shift in tone from gray-black to a lighter, drier appearance. That visible shift is the mineral compound penetrating the cell walls and binding into the fiber structure in real time. Let the treated surface air dry completely, which takes approximately 3 to 5 hours, depending on wood density and ambient humidity. Once fully dry, apply a second coat following the same process for maximum penetration depth and long-term stability. After the second coat cures, the surface is ready to accept any finish you choose: paint, linseed oil, exterior varnish, rubberized sealant, or beeswax. The borate integrated wood surface actually bonds more effectively to finish coats than untreated bare timber does. For camp tools like axe handles, walking staffs, and wooden knife scales, apply the solution and finish with a generous coat of boiled linseed oil or raw beeswax worked in with a cloth. For vehicle storage platforms, roof deck boards, and undercarriage wood components, apply the solution and follow with a rubberized exterior sealant or a film of exterior deck oil. For wooden cookware and camp cutting boards, apply a light treatment to any decayed spots, let it penetrate and dry, then refinish with food-safe mineral oil as normal. 500 grams of boric acid powder is sufficient to treat an entire full-size wooden deck platform, a complete set of camp tool handles, and a full season of outdoor wooden equipment maintenance. Total investment, $4 and roughly 40 minutes of a free afternoon. Compare that to a professional timber preservation service charging $400 to $900 for what is fundamentally the same molecular binding reaction performed with a more expensive spray rig. A carpenter restoring heritage farm buildings in rural Vermont began recording his boric acid treatments on an 1890s timber barn frame in 2017. After 4 consecutive wet winters with heavy snowmelt exposure, the treated sections showed absolutely zero decay recurrence, zero new rot, zero new fungal activity. After 4 Vermont winters, untreated control sections on the same barn frame developed visible new surface decay within 10 months. The chemistry does not wear away because it is not a barrier sitting on the surface waiting to be breached. The wood fiber itself has been molecularly integrated with a permanent mineral shield. Every civilization that worked with timber understood this fundamental truth. Egyptian builders knew it, standing over pale mineral pools beneath the weight of desert sun. Chinese engineers knew it, soaking river bridge beams in crystal-clear borate water before the spring floods came. Viking shipwrights knew it, working mineral brine into hull planks by firelight inside frozen boathouses. West African craftsmen knew it, painting mineral ash extract onto granary posts before the monsoon season arrived. Your great-grandparents knew it, dissolving volcanic mineral crystals in a cast iron pot on the back step every autumn before the first frost. $600 billion in annual building materials revenue depends on you never learning any of those names. $120 billion in yearly decay repair invoices depends on you believing that rot is an unstoppable natural force with no lasting cure. $35 bottles of rebranded boric acid on hardware store shelves depend on you never once flipping the bottle over and reading the ingredient panel. But this knowledge did not vanish. It was priced out of your awareness, buried beneath advertising budgets, and concealed behind proprietary trade names. Chemistry does not answer to brand strategy. Borate integration does not expire, and volcanic mineral deposits have never once invoiced anyone a licensing fee. If this vault shifted the way you look at the rot spreading across your axe handle, your deck boards, your camp table, or your storage platform, then subscribe and share this video right now. Every single share drives a crack through the wall they spent billions constructing around knowledge that was never theirs to lock away. Every subscription keeps this channel cutting deeper into the vaults they assumed were permanently sealed. The next vault opens soon, and what is waiting inside is the one thing every camper discards without thinking that could generate enough warmth to survive a complete grid failure.